Hello, everyone. Happy Orange Friday and welcome to Friday with the Family. We are so glad that you are joining us. Before we get started, I do want to remind you all that we want this to be something you're a part of as well. So you can ask questions if you're using the ALC webinar service through the Ask a Question button. And then if you're watching live on Facebook, you feel free to put it in there, and then they will get me those questions and we will get them to our wonderful guests. So without further ado, we're really excited for this week. We have the stadium and arena voice of the Cowboys, Larry Reece. Thank you, Larry, for joining us.
Hey, it's great to be with you. I think this is great that you're doing this because I think we're all just missing one another. So it's great to see you. It was great to see Chase a minute ago as we were getting ready for this, and just really missing all of our fans and great OSU family.
Yes, big shout out to the Alumni Association and Chase Carter behind the scenes that make this possible. And so we are missing each other. We're also missing sports. What has life looked like for you there?
Well, I tell you, we got to get back to it. I think we're all figuring out how sports kind of keeps us all mentally sane, especially me. Just to be able to tune into a ball game or be able to call a ball game or just even go to a ball game would just be such a treat right now. I know we have so many diehard fans out there that feel the same way, and it's just been the most surreal time. I was at the Big 12 tournament, and we'd gotten word after the big win over Iowa State on night one that, hey, they were going to shrink crowds. We were only going to get 125 tickets. So my wife, Jimmy, and I were getting ready to go to the second game, and we get down in the lobby, and there's Coach Holder and Chad and a whole bunch of our staff standing around, and we got word that, no, it's not going to be 125 people. We're not even having a ball game. And my wife and I it just felt surreal in that Westin Hotel in Kansas City. And we got in the car, and my wife said, I feel like aliens are going to drop out of the sky. It's felt surreal for the last couple of months.
Well, and then speaking of basketball, we lost one of our greats this week, and sad week for both the OSU family, the Sutton family, but also really special to remember all the things that Eddie brought to basketball in general and also OSU. Do you have any memories you can share with us since you got to see that up close and personal?
I've got so many. I mean, I was fortunate that I got a call from the Sutton family, and they said, hey, the doc says, if you want to see Coach, you better come this weekend. And so I called Randy Rutherford, one of our great Cowboy basketball players, and said, let's meet at Coach's house on Saturday. Little did we know that would be the day that he'd pass away, but we got the opportunity to go in. We went in about noon or just a little bit after. And I walked in, and he had his eyes closed, and I said, Coach, I've got one of the greatest shooters, actually the greatest shooter you've ever had, Randy Rutherford, the way I used to introduce him over the public address system. And Coach's eyes popped open, and Randy and I got a chance to tell some stories on him right there with him. And then also I just looked at Coach and I said, thank you for making my life better. And he really did. And I don't mean that just with basketball. Now, the ride at basketball was so much fun. I was fortunate that Coach's first year, I was a student, and my roommate and I would go line up and make sure we got the front row seats in the end zone where we could yell at the opposing coach, especially if it was Billy Tubbs. But my roommate's Ronnie Coker, and we would get there with these basketballs on our head and the eyes cut out, and we were just part of the rowdiness that Coach Sutton in Gallagher-Iba Arena, and it was so much fun to do it that year. And he really lifted our spirits at a time we needed our spirits lifted. You remember wrestling was having some probation troubles, and so was football, and basketball hadn't really been much except for a couple of years since Mr. Iba had retired. So, boy, it didn't take long for us to sell out when Coach Sutton was announced and Mr. Iba was leading the parade of excitement. And this town was abuzz. And not only did he bring basketball back and lift our spirits, but I truly believe, Julia, if we didn't have Coach Sutton here, I don't believe Terry Don would have had a reason to renovate the athletic center. And even though we borrowed a lot of that, the city of Stillwater stepped up with a use tax, but we borrowed a lot of that. We didn't raise a lot of money, but what it did was it changed our mindset and made us believe that we could do big things at Oklahoma State. And now look what's happened with the athletic village. And it took Boone Pickens and Mike Holder and so many other people, so many donors to make it happen. But I think the spark that started it came from Eddie Sutton.
And everybody knows he's such a great coach, over 800 wins and going to be in the Hall of Fame here pretty soon. What do you think it was that made him special on the court?
I tell you, on the court, he was just a leader of men, and he knew the game of basketball. I would go to practice, and he would stop practice about every 18 seconds, and he would correct 4 guys on what they did wrong. He saw everything. Off the court, he was so special because he to me, I was a student when I started announcing, and he was intimidating to me. When I would see him, I'd kind of just like, "Hi, coach," and he was intimidating. I asked Randy Rutherford about that. He goes, "I was scared to death of him until the day I stopped playing for him, and then I realized he just had, as coach would say, a big Valentine right here." And he did. He had such a big Valentine. He loved to make people feel special. And I've never seen anyone write as many handwritten notes. I'd like to know how many he wrote because it'd be an astronomical number. But he knew that from his platform, he could make people feel special, or as he would say, spatial. And he would write those notes. He would also, I don't know how he did it, but anytime somebody was ill and in the hospital or there was a death in the family, he was right there with flowers, or he would show up personally. And then, you know, if you had a baby that was born, like my daughter Lauren, who's a senior at Oklahoma State, a second-year senior, she points out, but the apple didn't fall far from the tree in that area. But, you know, when she was born, we got little Nike shoes for our newborn, and he did that for so many people. And then on top of that, he would always be the first one to call you on your birthday. He'd try to be anyway. And he would sing happy birthday to you. So you see this gruff scowl on his face, and he's ripping on the officials or getting onto a player, and you think, man, that guy's intimidating. And he feels that way to you. But when you would get to know him, he just had a big heart, and he loved to make people feel good.
That's awesome. I think I got some of those shoes too when I was born. So that is pretty cool. I talked with Joey Graham yesterday from the 2004-2005 team, and he was talking about how Eddie even made them go to an etiquette class when they were there, that it was important that they learned all these. I just thought that was so interesting, and truly the whole person in the team. So,
well, he and Patsy always treated their players like sons, like family. And then they also did that with staff, you know, even the lowly public address announcer, and just made you feel like you were part of their family. But they knew that it was more than just coaching basketball. They were there to help these young people become successful young men. And I think you see it when you see our players come back, and when coach was at a game, they'd come over and hug him and love on him. And even when he couldn't really vocalize his feelings the last few years, you'd see him light up. He was so happy to see one of his boys, or see somebody that coached on his staff, or somebody he coached against, like Kelvin Sampson, who I was never a big fan of Kelvin Sampson until he went over and hugged Coach Sutton. What was it, year before last, and then kissed him on the forehead, and then was crying in the press conference talking about him. So that just tells you the reach of Coach Sutton and the kind of person he is, and that he was just beloved by so many.
Well, we'll be excited to get back on Eddie Sutton court soon and hear your voice in the arena soon as well. What have you been doing at home to pass the time? Because I know it's a little slower than normal.
Well, I tell you, working from home, and luckily my job is to reach out and build relationships with our supporters. And so I'm able to do that from home, whether I'm on the computer or on a Zoom call, or whether I'm just on the phone or sending text messages. So I've been doing a lot of that. But if I ever set my phone down or step away from the computer, my wife, Jimmy, who is an interior decorator, she thinks I'm fair game. So if I do that and I walk away, she's like, "Hey, come out here a minute." Next thing I know, I'm moving rock or something. You know, I mean, she's always got a project. And we bought a new house here in Stillwater that's been kind of one that we needed to bring back to life. And she's really good at what she does, and she's really good at telling me what I need to do. So I'll say this: I think there's going to be more beautiful landscaping, beautiful yards in this country, not just in Stillwater, but across this country, because people have had a little bit more time to do those things, especially in the evenings.
That's very true. Well, let's step back to when you started. How did you become the voice of the Cowboys?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story. I'm kind of like you. I went into journalism and broadcasting, And I'm from Miami, Oklahoma. And, you know, in Miami, Oklahoma, I was a war dog and I played all the sports. And I just knew because I was such a big sports guy and I wasn't bad at when I was playing. I thought somebody's going to offer me a scholarship. Well, by my junior year, I realized there's no coaches talking to me. And how am I going to stay around sports? That's when I went into sports broadcasting at NEO, first of all. And then I came to Stillwater. And when I was in Miami, though, before that, I did go to the radio station with a friend and we talked them into letting us call War Dog basketball games. And so I got some experience, which, as you know, is so important when you're going into this field. And so when I got to Stillwater, I continued in journalism and broadcasting. And I didn't even know my instructor, Dr. Ed Paulin, knew my name, but Steve Buzzard from the athletic department, who was our media relations coordinator, actually, back then we called him sports information director. He called over to Dr. Paulin on campus and just said, hey, do you have anybody that might want to call Cowgirl basketball games? And to my surprise, Dr. Paulin did know my name and he gave Steve my name. And I went and met with Steve. And, you know, there's something about being from small towns. There's so many advantages, like being able to call games for War Dog basketball because it was a small town. Well, the small town helped me again because when I went to meet with Steve Buzzard, he asked me where I was from. I said, Miami, Oklahoma. He goes, I'm from Quapaw. Well, that's like 8 minutes from Miami. So we hit it off immediately, started talking about northeastern Oklahoma. And let's be honest, Steve really was just trying to fill a spot. Back then, Cowgirl basketball might not have 300 people in attendance. He just needed somebody to do it. And he asked me if I'd ever done it. And I said, oh, yeah, I've called games on the public address. He took a chance on this student and gave me the job. Well, the next year, after I did Cowgirl basketball for a year, Steve stuck his neck out on the line for this student. He wanted me to be the first student to call the games on the mic for Cowboy football and Cowboy basketball. And this is Coach Sutton's second year. And there had been a couple of faculty members have been calling each of those for 22 and 25 years respectively. So it was kind of a political move, but Steve stuck his neck out on the line and I started calling the games. So I came in calling games for the Cowboys. I always say Big Country and I came in the same year. And I'll tell you one more story on that real quickly. And that is, it was my first year and I'd heard that Byron Houston had called this kid from Gans, Oklahoma, Big Country. And I thought, I think the crowd would like that. So I didn't ask Steve. I just introduced him when he got into the starting lineup. I think after we went to New York and won the preseason NIT, I introduced the team. And when I got to the 7-foot center from Gans, Oklahoma, I said, they call him Big Country. And luckily for me, the crowd went crazy. And Steve Buzzard looked at me and kind of went like this. And it all worked out. And I got to keep my job. And the legend of country started to be born right there.
Well, that's awesome. I didn't know that's how that started. I love that story.
Kind of crazy. I took a little flyer on that one, and luckily it worked out. And from then on, we kind of started having nicknames back in the day. That first team was Sean Sutton and Corey Williams and Darwin Alexander and Byron, as I said, and Country. And just great times, and I've had so much fun since then. That was, 1991.
Well, do you have a favorite memory from all of it, if you had to pick one?
Well, I don't know that I could pick one. I would say in basketball, one would be with Big Country, and that is he hit the half-court shot to tie the game against Norm Stewart and the Missouri Tigers, and it looked like we had lost, and Milton Brown throws it to half-court, and what Coach Sutton had called for was Country to catch it at midcourt and either turn and give it to Randy Rutherford, one of the greatest shooters probably the greatest shooter I've ever seen, or Brooks Thompson, just about as good a shooter on the other wing, and Country bobbled it. And then he brought it back in, turned around, and flung it up. And before it got halfway there, Country throws his arms up, and he's not 20 feet away from me, and it goes in. And so it's a tie game. We didn't win it then, but Norm Stewart knew the Cowboys were winning this ball game after that happened. So he comes down and starts yelling at this little student that we didn't start the clock. And so being a team player, as he's berating me, storming Norman Stewart's all over me, I lift my mic up. I'm like, hey, and I point down and I throw Kent Bunker under the bus because he was the one on the clock. I said, go down there and chew on him. And so a funny moment right there, but it doesn't get any better than that. Another basketball game would be the 3 overtime win over Kevin Durant and the Texas Longhorns. I love the fact that Kevin Durant never won in Gallagher Arena. Now, he was only in there once, but we won it in triple overtime. That was when Sean Sutton was the head coach, and that was the greatest game I've ever witnessed. But I've seen so many good ones. And of course, there's great stuff in football too. The 2011 Big 12 championship, the way we just ran over OU for the Big 12 championship. Should have got in the national championship title game, but we didn't. I still think we would have beaten LSU, but to beat OU 44-10, win that Big 12 championship. And then there's one more story I'll share with you. That I can't remember the year, but we beat OU, and afterwards our fans tore down the goalpost. And I was sitting in my booth watching this, and you could see them start to carry part of the goalpost up the stands. And President Halligan, Jim Halligan, ran into my booth. He goes, "Larry, I'm afraid they're going to throw that over the side of the stadium." And I said, "It sure looks like they're going up there for a reason." And Dr. Halligan's sweating bullets. He goes, "What are we going to do?" And I said, "Well, hang on, let me try this." And I said, "Ladies and gentlemen, as we continue the celebration of the Bedlam victory tonight, let's remember there are people on the side of the stadium. Please do not throw the goalpost over the side of the stadium." And our fans went, "Huh." And they stopped. They set the goalpost down. And President Halligan, I was his hero for that night. So that's one of the funnier moments at the stadium.
Wow. Yeah, sometimes people just need to be told, but they can't do, I guess.
They were celebrating. They weren't thinking, but that was a crazy moment. And I have people ask about that one all the time. That we were worried, and luckily they could still hear me over all the cheers after the Bedlam win. And they set the goalpost down, and the party continued.
Well, and everybody knows that you're there on game days, but you do so much more on campus as well. Do you want to touch on a little bit of your other roles in Stillwater?
I've got the best of both worlds because, like I told you, I'm a huge sports fan, and I wanted to be around sports. So I was able to do that by going through journalism and broadcasting at OSU and then getting the job with OSU Athletics. But the other side of that is my real job, my day job is going out and visiting with people that love the same school that I do. So I go out and I visit with our alums and our donors and just build relationships and find out what they're passionate about. I work for OSU Athletics. Paycheck comes from the OSU Foundation. And really want to say, while I mentioned the foundation, thanks to Kirk Jewell. He and I basically worked together for the last 16 and a half years. And just wish he and Jen all the best in retirement. I mean, he really changed the culture in the foundation, and looking forward to Blair Atkinson and what she's going to do. I think she is a rock star as well. So, but yeah, my job is just building relationships, and what better job to have than, go to lunch and all we do is talk about OSU, something that I'm so passionate about. And there's so many of our supporters out there that they live and breathe bright orange as well. So it couldn't get any better. Then on game days, I get to have a little fun. So I'm really, really blessed.
And then you're heavily involved with Coaches versus Cancer, which is a very important thing there at OSU. Can you share a bit about that program for people that don't know?
Well, speaking of Coach Sutton, he started it. And speaking of Norm Stewart, they started it for Storm and Norman Stewart when he was diagnosed with cancer. And I'm so proud of what Coach Sutton brought us. And Kendria Cost does an amazing job with it. Dave Hunziker is very involved. I'm blessed to be involved as well. And we've been doing it for years. And we've had one of the top Coaches versus Cancer programs in the country year in and year out because our fans are so generous. But what the program really is about, I think it's the best thing we do because I learned firsthand. And I'll say this, when I was diagnosed with throat cancer 5 years ago, I put my head down and the wind was knocked out of me, and my wife, Jimmy, was giving me a hug, and I started to feel sorry for myself. And the first thing I thought of about 90 seconds into that, I started thinking about these cancer kicking kids that I read about and I talk about over the mic all these years. And I thought, man, if those kids can do it, I got to buck up and get ready for this battle. So they really inspired me. But that program is the best thing we do because when you have cancer, you need distractions and you need to know that people care about you. And that's what Coaches versus Cancer does. We bring in the kids that get to meet our athletes and get to have fun on our court or on our field, and we spotlight them and just give them and their families that distraction they need when they're battling cancer. And then we bring in cancer survivors that are adults, and we spotlight them before the game and let our crowd's so great about going crazy when we say they're cancer free or they've been battling for however many years. And it's just an amazingly rewarding program. And I'm so proud of that. What Coach Sutton brought us in OSU Coaches versus Cancer. It's amazing.
I agree. Well, which sport is more fun to announce? This is a tough one. Football or basketball, and why?
Well, I love both of them because football, I'm up on top and I'm able to see everything. You can see the holes opening up, and I've got three great spotters. I'll give a shout out to Jason Pogue. We went to high school together in Miami, and Chuck Lester, whose dad was the first Pistol Pete to wear the head, and then lefty Steve Baumhoff. We were in college together. They spot for me up there, and we have a ball on game days, and especially since what Coach Miles started and Coach Gundy has carried on, and what Boone Pickens brought us. That stadium's remarkable. It's so much fun. With that being said, being in the middle of it where Norm Stewart can yell at me, it's pretty fun down there courtside in Gallagher Arena, and you can hear what the players are saying, the officials are saying, so I don't know that I can pick a favorite, but I do love being down there in the thick of things and being able to sit there with a legend from OSU like Lee Manzer, who's keeping the scorebook, and Kent Bunker, who's been there for, I don't know, 40 some years. And we've got a really great team there, and it's just so much fun. I've seen so many great players and coaches come through there. And then I'm pretty close. I sit next to Tia. She's on the headset, and she does a great job directing traffic, and we're down kind of toward the visiting bench, and we can hear how many F-bombs come out of the opposing coach. And when things are going well for the Cowboys, that number goes up pretty extremely.
I believe that. I do believe that. Well, with this new recruited class for men's basketball specifically, we got Cade Cunningham coming in. How do you feel about that? You have any predictions?
It's amazing the job that Coach Boynton is doing, the way that he can connect and the way he just outworks people on the recruiting trail. But then also, I'll be honest with you, he reminds me a little bit of Coach Sutton in the way that he's building his army. When Coach got here, he immediately started talking about defense, discipline, and dedication, but he also started talking about the sixth man, and he started getting out and meeting people. And when you engage with a coach, you feel more invested in their program. And Coach Boynton gets that, and he's out there, and he rarely, I don't know that I've ever heard him say no to coming to a special event or helping out with a special cause. And he supports all of our programs and everything across campus. And he and his wife Jenny are just great, and I'm excited because he's got some great talent coming in. It's not just the number one player in the United States. It's the number one player in Canada, and a great class to come along with them. And I think we're about to really get rowdy again in Gallagher Arena, and I can't wait because Gallagher Iba is my favorite building on earth. I joked that my daughter Lauren, when when she was born, her first two words were Gallagher and Iba, but it's special when that place is rocking. It is really the rowdiest arena in the country.
I can't wait. Well, give us a little bit of the behind the scenes of what goes on in your job. How do you prepare for a game?
That's a better question for Dave Hunziker because he is a stat geek and he just breaks it all down. And, my main job is making sure I know what's happening with our team, and then make sure I go over to somebody that's from the opposing team and get all the pronunciations, because as you know, you lose your credibility more quickly than anything if you're saying names incorrectly. So I learned that from a young age, and just try to make sure I have that. But other than that, it's when I'm on the mic, it's about enthusiasm, and the inflection in your voice can maybe just heighten the excitement of the crowd, whether it be in Boone Pickens Stadium or whether it's in Gallagher Arena. And that's my job. I'm not supposed to be a cheerleader, and I probably walk a pretty fine line there, but I think everybody knows that I'm for the guys in bright orange, and Oklahoma State's my team.
So how did you learn how to control your voice? Was that something you learned back calling games in Miami, or did you learn that in college, or was it just natural?
I think a little bit of it was natural, but I'll say this. My dad back in the day, what gave me the idea to go into this was he called our Little League games. And so I hit one home run over the fence in my life. And I remember rounding second base, and I hear my dad say, "Home run for Larry Reece. That's my boy." And I heard that enthusiasm in his voice, and that's a moment I'll never forget. And so I think I learned that enthusiasm from my dad. But it's also pretty easy when that's your team down there. I'm sure I could have fun calling somebody else's games, but when it's your team and you've got orange blood pumping through your veins, it's pretty easy to get excited about what's happening.
Gotcha. Well, and I have one more question for after we wrap, but do you have anything else you'd like to add before we close off here?
I just want to thank our OSU fans for treating me so well and welcoming me back in the day and all through these years. I mean, this is just such a special place. I came here and pitched a tent as a student, and I've been blessed that I never had to leave. And I think there's a lot of students who would like to have that opportunity, and I don't take it for granted. And I just want to say thanks. And I just want to say, hey, everybody stay safe. And I pray that you'll wear your mask. And if you won't do it for yourself, do it for others. And let's stay safe and get through this. There's going to be a vaccine coming around the corner. We just don't know when. And until then, let's stay safe. And then let's get back together and celebrate, hopefully, this Cowboy football season, because Chuba and Tylen and Spencer and all the guys are going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess I have 2 questions then, because that led me to another. How do you feel about all those guys coming back, and why do you think that they were willing to do another year?
I think it's because of what I said a moment ago. This place is special. And I think those guys, even though they know they're going to go off and have great professional careers, you can't go back to college. We saw it with Marcus Smart. He could have gone, but he wanted to come back for one more year. You see that with Tylen. You see it with Chuba. I think they wanted to come back for one more ride because they know how special this team's going to be. So get your season tickets and giddy up. Let's go, Pokes.
There we go. Well, we do have some exciting Friday with the Family events planned for you all in June, and you'll want to gather your future Cowboys as well. Beginning June 12th, we're taking Grandparent University online, and we'll be airing recorded and live sessions for Cowboys of all ages. For more information, you can go to cowboy.family, or it will be emailed out next week to different groups. So stay tuned for that. And then, Larry, here's our final special request. So we are all missing football. So if you'll send us out with a football intro, the official thing, let's get everybody hyped.
All right, let's see here. We welcome you to the home of the Cowboys, Boone Pickens Stadium. This is our home. This is our family, and this is our team. Are you ready for Cowboy football?
There we go. I can feel it already. Well, awesome. Thank you guys for joining us. As Larry said, stay safe, because we want to all be back in Stillwater at some point soon. Thank you for watching.